full tilt, like the donkey avatar. I hated it.
Yeah, the full tilt poker story is that you couldn't choose a picture. You couldn't upload a picture like you could on PokerStars, but you could still choose avatars. And I had the clown one because uh Grant, one of the biggest winners ever on the side, who's gonna be one of our guests in the upcoming episodes, he had it. And what you could do with the avatar is you could choose whether it's like just looking seriously or smiling or angry, or I think there was one more. I don't know. Maybe there was one more. And I actually had it. So and I remember one night I was playing and I wanted pot. And then I would turn on the smile. And one guy would just go insane in the chat. He would just keep telling me I should stop laughing. Just, what I would do is I would switch like constantly between serious laughing. I was looking so, and he was really angry in the chat, and I figured that's pretty good for me. Yeah, so some fun story I remember.
How did you start with poker, by the way?
Yeah, we just talked about it, and we figured that it's been quite a while ago. It's like I think it's 20 years already. Yeah, must be close to that. So many of us who played online, I think, started playing poker when Chris Moneymaker won the WSOP, and it was like the first guy, I think, first amateur who won it. So people heard of it and figured, well, let's try it out as well. Obviously, the internet and all that stuff made it possible as well. And for me, yeah, I got into poker through Command Conquer, which I played, and Command Conquer you could play in teams. And one guy who I played with was playing poker, and he told me what he's doing. I didn't even know what poker was actually. I actually thought exactly what so many people are thinking nowadays is that so if I bet 1 million and my opponent just has like 500,000, I win the pot because he can't call, so he has to fold. That was my thinking basically back then. Obviously, you can only bet as much as your opponent has. I mean, you can bet more, but it doesn't matter. Um, so I got into poker and I didn't really know how to play. Like honestly, I started with some basic strategy when I was back then at school. So what about you?
My story is totally different. I started around 2005, and I didn't know at all about Moneymaker and the World Series. It was actually some friends. Like we would play cards together, but like local German games. And then one day he said, "Hey, do you know poker? Let's try it out. I heard about it." And then I played, I believe, for 1 year, like with my friends, just casually on parties or when we met up. And only later I discovered online poker and poker strategy. So that was around 2005 or six when I really started getting into online poker. So around that. So you started earlier than me.
Yeah, I also remember, of course, I was playing with my friends as well. We were playing um for money, but I think we played I think €5 everyone. So we were 5-6. So whoever wins gets 30 or something. It was yeah, we actually didn't have poker chips back then. We were playing with coins. I had to go to the bank and get I mean uses the coins back then. And while we were playing with some beer, I was also playing some free rolls. I remember on a side on the computer. I think it was Euro Poker or Euro Poker. They were part of the iPoker network later on. And it was a very fun time because you had so many free rolls where you didn't have to deposit any money. There were actually even sites like I remember Doyle Poker was around where you would just get money. You would just get money to play. Not sure which sites also offered it. So no deposit, um, cash. I think I used most of them, I would say. Um, and yeah, you had so many players, and the biggest games were probably, I remember it was 10-20 that I've seen. There were higher games for sure, and it was really crazy seeing people playing for pots of like 5K, 6K, 7K. You would just start thinking, oh, that's a used car. So there goes a used car. There goes a used car. Yeah. Really, really interesting. So, um, how did you move on? How did you move on from like you got into poker and what came next?
What came next? Like I read a lot of articles online and started playing cash game first, no limit holding cash game, but then soon switched to tournaments. I believe the first 1 or 2 years, I only played tournaments. I was working full time. And then in the evening, I would like load up my PC and start grinding until the morning, like low stakes tournaments. And I even like cashed some bigger sums without like a lot of knowledge, more luck than skill. But yeah, that was great. And I still remember from my first big winnings, I believe it was 800 or 900 euros for a €5 tournament or something. I bought a new desk and two new screens. Uh, and 1 week later, I was playing a tournament and got a bad beat on the bubble. And I hit my table so hard that I split the table with my two new monitors, and then I was sitting there, and everything came down on me, and I was like, "No, what do I do?" I couldn't move, and all the monitors were on me and linked with cables, so it was really hard. So yeah, that's how not to tilt in a poker session. But let's stop with the bad beat talk. Maybe we come back to this, for sure we will. But let's talk about how did you discover poker strategy and how did you end up there?
Yeah, so poker strategy was growing really fast and was the biggest poker school back then. So you had schools like Card Runners, Uses Cracked. Um, I think you had Lego Poker as well. Yeah. I think you had like three, four, and Poker Strategy was the worst one. Maybe there were some smaller ones, but basically it was Card Runners, Lego, Deuces Cracked, and a Poker Strategy. And I actually took coaching back then from some players. And we're gonna discuss which players and so on in future episodes for sure. We're gonna also had the guests in our podcast, and I was working for Deuces Cracked as a coach, and got the opportunity to work for Poker Strategy as well. Um, and was really happy to join it, especially because Poker Strategy had a German community. So there were videos made back then, um, playing No Limit Hold'em in German, and I think Poker Strategy did a really good job with delivering content to, I mean, to every customer, basically. And Poker Strategy, I think the history behind Poker Strategy is also that I would say in a first couple of years, uh, people were playing on there more for fun, I would say. And then you had forum like 2+2 where all the best players would share strategy as well. And then you had card runners decide which would sign up really good players as well for their videos. Um, and then Poker Strategy, but actually really improved over the time. It got so big and had so many really, really, really good players. Yeah, so this is the way I took and discovered Poker Strategy. Also, Poker Strategy. If I, but you could tell us more about it. That they had obviously great parties and yeah, and also that black member thing that I never got. Yeah, I didn't make it any because I didn't sign up on PokerStars through Poker Strategy. I didn't even know about it. I just created an account and missed so much value, I would
Yeah,
say.
yeah, that's a pity.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
pity.
So how about you? How did you get out? Actually, did you just find Poker Strategy, or did someone tell you to go there?
I believe I just found it online. I looked for, because I took, like, from what you said, you took poker very seriously very early. Like, you were sort of a competitive gamer, and then you moved on to another game, but already like very competitive. And my story is completely different, because I was just playing casually. I didn't even think about it. I just wanted to, like, I had fun a lot, like, and then I could win some money, but I never thought of it like it really hardcore gaming aspect or strategy or stuff. I wanted to learn more, to have more fun. Um, and the, the story how I came to poker strategy is actually really funny. Uh, and I have to do like some detours before coming to this. Of course, like, I have a PhD in philosophy, and that's when I actually started playing poker, was when I was writing my PhD thesis. And I was playing with friends. And then after finishing, I looked for a job, and got a really nice job in a small wine business. I was working as wine expert, um, basically because I could speak Italian, and they were looking for someone who told them he knows about wines, which I did a little, but they really wanted someone who can talk Italian. So I worked for this company. And I was really into wine, getting into all of this. I was the assistant of the SEO, and I did everything in the company. I did the web page. I even like unloaded trucks. I was helping like selling wines and the shop and so on. So I did everything. I created a manual, and then after 2 years, I told my boss, "Hey, I want to learn something more. I want to learn something more about how to run a business and do a sort of like business degree. Or I want to go the wine route and become a sommelier or do some like formal education in that area." Because he offered me to well, pay something for this. And then I told him, like, these are the options I see. Like, what do you recommend? And he was like, let me think until tomorrow. And then tomorrow became 1 week. And then after 1 month, I was like, did you already decide on what to do? Uh, and then I will never forget. And then he said, yeah, like, I decided now, like, I believe it would best you make a truck license. Uh, Yeah, so he wanted me to drive the truck even, and then I quit immediately, and and then I found a job offer at Poker Strategy for a German content writer, and I applied, and then I got invited to the first interview in Hamburg. It was really amazing because uh, they paid everything. They paid the flight, the hotel, and then second interview again in Hamburg. Again, they paid everything. And then the third interview in Gibraltar, where Poker Strategy was moving at that time. That was end of 2008. And then in February 2009, I started there as a content writer. So that's my story, how I came to to poker strategy, not as a competitive poker player, but as someone who could write stuff. Like that was my tag, so to say, for the job.
Yeah. Interesting story. And for sure, a good idea to pay for people you want to hire because you want good people. You want really good employees. And that's why it was a really good investment, I think, when they paid for the flight and just to get good people on board. And what I actually remember now is that um, so before I got to poker strategy as a coach, I was on TV and a 2 months to million TV show. And I got to this TV show through my coaching that I booked with Jason Rosenkrantz. And he will be one of our guests in the future episodes. And they were running some show that's called 2 months to million, where they were figuring they want to make 2 million in 2 months. It was Jason Rosenkrantz and three other players. And then I was coaching for Deuces Cracked, making videos and poker strategy. A guy there who was looking for a new content maker got in touch with me and asked if I wanted to make videos as well, and that's how I got there too. And yeah, so it's really like interesting the way people started to play poker. I remember, like you said, that you were writing and already working full time, and many people, in my experience, got to poker. I wouldn't say by luck, but it somehow happened, and then people started to figure out what they can do, if they can make money, if they want to play for fun. And I remember I don't know how I figured out that the first book I read was Super System. That's a
Doyle.
book by Doyle. Yeah, I don't even know how I found it. I was just looking. Yeah, I don't know, was Google around back then? No, I, but I was
Yeah,
just
for
Googling.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I was Googling and found Super System. And yeah, and then I still remember that Doll said, yeah, if you flop a set and the board is dry, so we actually don't want to include that much strategy in the podcast, but that has to be done at least here. So you can slow play a hand, you can fast play a hand, the basic strategies, and this is how I also uh, try to improve. But like you said, it was so much it wasn't really knowledge that the way we would talk about it now. It was more like, okay, I have I have top pair, so it should be good enough, basically. And if it's not good enough, then I'm just getting unlucky. That's the way most people, I would also say, just play, because it's a really complex game, and you need to think in um, way more defined in ranges and stuff like that. It gets really complicated. But we don't want to get into it that much. We want to keep it fun right
Yeah,
here.
yes. So if you talk about poker from today's view, it's really funny because back then, like I was playing already 5 or 6 years and never thought really about ranges or like what could the other one hold. Like you look at your hands and say, like, I have a set. Like
Yeah,
and then should I slow play or not? But there was not that much more strategy into it, at least at how I played in the beginning. Uh,
yeah. I have to tell those couple stories that there. When I used to play, I remember I was party poker and was no limit hold'em. I guess 4 tables. I just had one screen, but then yeah, I got two screens at some point. But yeah, it was one screen, and you had so many tables across the screen, and you would get dealt aces. And I still remember, like, I had aces on one table and ace king and kings on the other table, and my internet connection would drop. It would go crazy because the internet was kind of slow back then, and especially in Germany, it's still slow. But we are trying to improve.
Yeah, I play with the
But
modem.
oh hell yeah, the
Yeah,
modem,
over the phone line. Yeah.
56K modem. Oh yeah, yeah, that's crazy. But basically, the game was just so good. People just wouldn't believe it nowadays. Like if you had aces, you would just raise, and people would call. Everybody would come along because they would go like, "Well, let me see a flop. Let me see." And you would get to the flop 4 way, 5 way. So 4 or 5 players would see the flop and continue playing. And there are stories where if you had aces, you would stack everybody at the table. It was crazy. Like in today games, you get aces, you raise, everybody folds. Probably you just you're you collect the blinds. But back then, people weren't folding. Everybody would continue playing. I mean, yeah, probably like deuce 7 would be a fold, but 10 deuce would not be a fold because Doyle won 2 bracelets with 10 deuce. Uh, Maybe it was suited, I don't know. So yeah, you had the game was completely different. And I remember a friend of mine, he was so he had aces, and some guy raised, and he re-raised pre-flop. And then one another guy calls, and then one more guy calls, and then one guy raises. And so what's getting complicated? What are we gonna do with aces? And he was thinking, and then he timed out.
Yeah, yeah.
Without, yeah, and they continue, and you would want like I think you would want all the money because then everybody came along, called, and yeah. So there are stories like that. Games were completely different. People were playing by feel or by just um, like let me see if I get lucky. Basically, that approach,
Uh,
which doesn't work nowadays anymore.
I remember very well when I got like my hands a starting hand shot for the very first time, and
Oh, yeah, yeah.
then you used it, and it felt like it already felt like cheating because
Yeah.
it was so powerful. It was like a superpower, and it was so basic concept basically. But before, I really didn't think that much about that. It was like, oh, you go with the flow, even in a tournament, like ICM, like no clue about that. You say, okay, now I'm in a good position. I feel good. I just want a hand. Like let's race again. And
Yeah.
yeah, uh, good old
A-
times. Good old times.
And I guess back then you could differentiate between cash game players and tournament players. And there was definitely a big gap in skill.
Big gap
Cash
in
game
both
players,
ways. In both ways.
yeah, yeah. I would say that the cash game players were way better, way better. And I mean, it's not surprising because you get to play way more hands in cash games. You can start playing anytime. You can play 10 tables, and the game is different. Like you can reload, you can lose a stack, and in tournaments there is a different strategy. Um, I paid a lot of money by playing tournaments, and I never won any of them. And I liked cash more. Like you said, you were playing tournaments because cash you could just sit and play and you could quit. I remember when I think I was at school or college. I don't remember, but I was playing in the morning, like 20 minutes, and I got lucky and won some money. I remember at school, I had a friend of mine who was playing as well, and we would discuss the couple hands we played before school, before we got. And remember that there was no iPhone, and I actually got lucky. I mean, nowadays I would just sit at school probably. I would have played on at school if we had the opportunity to play mobile. There was no such thing back then. No iPad, no iPhone. Yeah, the really interesting stuff.
Let's talk about your time at Poker Strategy as a coach. Like you came from This Is Correct, a very well renowned coach. Uh, and what sort of content did you produce?
Yeah, I was mainly playing no limit hold'em, six max, and heads up back then, and, and slowly moving to pot limit Omaha. And I was mainly creating content, playing four tables, six max, and or two tables heads up. Um, it was a really fun time, and I enjoyed it a lot making that content. Um, the community was really active on Poker Strategy. I mean, you need to remember that uh, how many members Poker Strategy had, and it was that's why it's the biggest poker school ever because they managed to um, to move to the all the markets across the world, especially Eastern market, European market, and stuff like that. While other sites were, yeah, I mean they were more narrow for the American market probably. So yeah, I was mainly playing a cash, six max, and heads up. Um, and back then, you also had those deep tables with 250 big blinds that you can buy in, which I liked the most, playing deep, where you can make bigger moves. And that's what I did back then on Poker Strategy. And also the way videos were made is quite different to what people are doing nowadays, because back then you didn't have the solvers and all the software you have nowadays to analyze your strategy. Like you said, you had a chart of the starting hands, and then you knew like, all right, I flopped an open ender, the open-ended straight draw, open-ended straight flush draw. Your equity is something like that. That's what you knew back then. Um, and people were playing game more by feel because it also worked out. I mean, for sure, the solver it doesn't matter how you play, but back then you could play exploitably and make money. People were more emotional. The game was um, unsolved. People didn't really know all the strategies they know nowadays. And you were so excited when you discovered something. This is what I really enjoyed. Like you would read the forums, you would talk with your friends about hands, and it was almost like I know, like reading a book. Like you read something, you discovered something into your strategy. Like there was some guy called if you are playing heads up and you raise and someone re-raises you and you call and then comes
That's
a threat.
too much.
Yeah, but I'm gonna say that. And someone bets and you call very quickly. People would say, "Oh, he probably doesn't have much," but then someone said you have to call super quickly because with a strong hand to make it look like you don't have anything. So it's a basic something super basic that worked back then and was really fun.
Yeah, the good old leveling game.
Yeah, level one, level two. Yeah. I think people are moving back to that a little bit. Like there are still poker players who are thinking a lot outside the box and doing quite well, quite well. Um, so how did your journey go on with poker strategy?
I started in 2009 as a content writer for German and English. And then very soon, uh, the company was growing at an insane rate. I remember when I arrived in Gibraltar, I was employee number 11, I believe. Uh, and then after 1 year, there were like more than 150 employees. So you can imagine, like when you were there at the beginning, uh, you almost naturally climbed up in ranks because there was so much need like for new guys. So I became team leader in education, in the education department. And maybe that will be an interesting topic for the future episodes too, how poker strategy was organized. in departments and units, because there was education department, community management, and then obviously all the other language communities. But coming back on that, like I became team lead, and then later on head of education. And in this function, I technically was your boss.
That's right.
Do you still remember that? Like, what was your feeling when you said, "Hey, I've got a new boss"? Or you don't
Yeah.
remember at all? That's what I.
No,
I
I remember that. I remember that. So I was um, hired by a guy. I think they will get him into the podcast as well. And there were some other guys at Poker Strategy. I still remember them having in my Skype account. And I remember that you were the boss of those guys. So I figured you must be my boss as well. But the work was so much fun. Like you are saying that it was a startup basically, and it was a new business, and everybody was kind of young. And it wasn't, yeah, I think it didn't feel like work. It was just fun doing the videos. And also, poker players, they are, like you said, poker strategy was pretty organized, and poker players are not organized usually. At least back then, they were not organized. They would just wake up whenever they feel like, and then they play, and then they would stop, and then play maybe for 20 hours, 40 hours, maybe not play at all. We had so much freedom, and it felt like I can't even describe it.
you know,
Uh,
what is funny, or what was one of the biggest challenges, especially for the poker community to understand, is that okay, I was head of education, and then like the expectation was he must be the best poker player of of everyone, because there was this association in the community that poker strategy is only poker. Like it's not even a business. Like we are just like, just poker. But there's no facility manager, or well, employees don't eat. It was all about poker, and so it was crazy sometimes if you have to explain like business concepts to a community of passionate poker players. Uh, for instance, like this one touches you as well. Like we have the high stakes producers, the high value producers of content, and the prices were like, even like for poker school, it was like uh, going up extremely. Like prices for the content pieces were insanely high. Like in hindsight, like that was absurd, but it was no. One video, why not 5K for a video for Insider 19? And no, yeah, we have to pay him. He's so good. We want it, but on a business level, that's obviously not scalable. So, uh, yeah, it was always funny and challenging, trying to maintain sort of business approach to the poker school aspect of it.
yeah, I think that many, like, there are so many companies that were building around poker. So you have, like poker strategy. Also, you have party poker, which was very big back then, and they had not just poker, they had also, I think they had sports betting already. At least they had casino and stuff like that. So if you are, first of all, if you are working for poker strategy, like you have to deal with poker players. And as I said, most of them were just, they were, not many were really professional, but were doing it for fun, playing for fun, making a lot of money, um, being very young as well. So there are people, I mean, so many played probably with fake IDs back then, players. I was already full age, so it wasn't me, but many were, there are so many players who were 16, 17. Um, I was at
We
least
are not allowed to
19.
say that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I mean, and yeah, they just started to play a little bit. Um, And if you have to deal with those people who are just students, they're going to school as well. And yeah, it's challenging. But I would say we're gonna move on to what we are doing nowadays in real jobs.
Let me quickly flick in, because you mentioned like the this young mindset approach. So basically, in Gibraltar, there was a huge high stakes community of very young poker players, uh, namely in the fixed limit section.
Yeah.
And well, we went to parties together at the place and so on. And one day I had a like sort of discussion, because I saw a lot of dirty clothes laying around. Like it was branded like Nike, Adidas stuff, like really expensive stuff. And then I said, hey, do you want to wash it, or why is it here? No, no, I'm throwing it away. And I was like, why would you throw it away? Because it was dirty, but it was brand new. And then like this guy explained me, like he calculated the EV of washing it versus buying it. And he said, like, "Hey, I can buy it in 10 minutes, and then I get shipped to me. But when I start washing it, then I have to hang it out to dry it, and then I have to put it back. And then like he calculated the EV like precisely of the action and the return on investment. And he said, no, it's cheaper. It's cheaper to just buy it new.
Yeah. People, I remember fixed limit. There were so many. I think PokerStrategy had actually the best players. Was focused around fixed limit quite a bit, and most games were running on no limit hold'em, I would say. But I remember some really good fixed limit players, the best back then. And yeah, I remember one guy who was really thinking about, if I'm gonna go to the restaurant, so what is the EV, so expected value going to this restaurant compared to the other restaurant, or traveling over there. And that's a really interesting approach, by the way, because because companies are thinking like that in bigger terms. Like, if do you want to create your own company, or do you want to work for someone? Does that investment make sense? Should I do that or this? And poker taught you to think this way a little bit, I would say. So it's been quite a while since I played poker last time, but I still realize that in daily life, in business, I'm able to use the maybe not the strategy, not the poker strategy, but the mindset poker created, or poker made you think more rational and more, yeah, I would say, rational and expected value, like when you're making decisions.
Do you still remember the strategy article, like about the plus EV of smashing your mouse? Do you know it? That's actually
Yeah.
fun. It was on one of the biggest strategy sites out there. And like the guy did the same. Like he calculated, okay, like let's say you play like 2-4 of a game, and you play 4 tables, and then like you run bad, you're tilting already. And I said, okay, like I have a gaming mouse and it costs $100. But when I smash it, I can't play anymore. But like when I continue tilting, it's the same story. Then I can lose like a lot more on all the tables I'm playing. So it's actually like when you start tilting, like just smash your mouse and leave it be. So yeah.
Yeah. I remember something similar. I didn't know there was an article about it, but for sure there was. I remember that. So there is a story of Patrick Antonius, who is probably biggest winner of all time, who said, so like those Logitech mouse, he once said, they're like so good. I smashed them, they still keep on working. Like, usually they go broke, but this one brand, he said that it's really good. They keep on working because he smashed them quite a bit. And there is a story of, I think it was him. He was playing against, I think it was Hazufly. One of the, he was the best fixed limit player back then, and they were playing, I don't know, 5,000, 10,000 blinds. And Antonius would disappear after a bad beat. He would disconnect and then come back like 3 days later. And the story is that he just smashed his MacBook or something like that and had to reorder a new one. And he said, like, well, MacBook, it's like 2, 3K, but that's not even a small blind. So it's pretty good investment. Yeah. I would have saved a lot of money probably by maybe doing it a little bit, but actually we can talk a little bit about the tilt that describes uh, anger in poker, probably, right? And I never really tilted. Uh,
I did, and a lot. No,
yeah, but I didn't really tilt in a, I mean, in the first some years, I would say. But then I remember when I was a student at the university, I had a neighbor who was also playing a little bit, and he would say he would hear it all the time when I'm angry because I my set didn't hold up. But I started to tilt the older I got, I would say. So
no, no,
and
that's the contrary. That's the,
okay.
but funny story. Maybe one of our future guests can tell you about it. I really had the bad habit. I got up very early, but didn't go to the office. So I usually like grinded 1 or 2 hours before I went there. Uh, and then when I arrived, my team could already tell if they would have a good day or a bad day at the office because
Yeah.
sometimes I arrived really tilted and sometimes really happy. And then I shared my story, obviously, but they could tell already. They had an experience in and, and reading me when I came and stepped in the office.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. He told me that. He told me, yeah, but Herbert is mad. You know what happened. Don't talk to him. He's not in the mood for any jokes. Yeah, I didn't have it that much. I felt it was really fun, but yeah, I think it also depends on if you're doing it full time, if you're playing just on the side, if you are how tough the game is, how long you're playing. Back then, people just played. Nowadays, or actually, I mean, not even nowadays, but like even like 8 years ago, people started to be super professional about it. They would wake up early, go to bed early, so they would they would schedule the way they're playing depending on, let's say you've got a Champions League game going on, people would play afterwards for sure because all the guys from England would be drunk sitting at the tables. And then people would also take breaks. They would for sure, if they lose a big pot or two pots in a row, they would request a break in a heads-up match and sit for 5, 6 minutes, relax. That a really good strategy because for sure the guy who's winning, who just won a big pot, he's feeling good. He wants to play on. And if you lost the big pot, you for sure are a little bit annoyed and you will not play your A game. And actually, people are doing it in sports just the same way. You want to take a break. You want to be fully focused. You want to have your sleep. Um, but it's like every business, like, right? In new businesses where people are, especially whoever is taking part in the businesses, if they are beginners, they just do it by feel. And the professionals, they will for sure take a professional approach and do better at it. So, what are we looking ahead to in our podcast journey?
So obviously, in the future episodes, what we want to do is we want to revive the old times, not only by us talking, about it. That would be boring sooner or later. But we want to invite like ex-colleagues, guys from the poker business, poker industry, uh, even someone like a moderator of a collaborator of with Poker Strategy, and talk about the personal stuff, like the anecdotes, the stories, the behind the scenes that no one really knows, uh, and not focus too much on strategies, but just on the personal view. Like for me, it's interesting. I worked with a lot of people back then. What are they doing now? Um, I'm still in contact with a bunch of guys, but with many I'm not in contact anymore, and I do not follow or stalk them actively on social media. So for me, it would be really interesting to hear from them how they remember their time there when we worked together or they were playing poker, and what are they doing now, and where did life bring them after. And there are still many that left in Gibraltar and still live there. Um,
Yeah, that sounds great. I think it's really interesting to talk with people who were part of the poker century, I would say, and are maybe still playing or moved on. And if they moved on, what are they doing nowadays? And where did they move on? So yeah, it sounds great. And
maybe,
we all,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, we also want to our listeners to post questions or email us or share or comment um, in the sections if you guys have questions or recommendations or even your own stories, perhaps. Because what I figured out after poker in a I would say real business world, I guess, that everybody like not everybody knows what poker is, but everybody heard of poker and everybody finds it interesting. And everybody played at least once the game and is really actually so many have to say to tell the story. So if you have one, share it with us.
Uh, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. I believe we already chatted quite some time. We had far bigger plans for today than we actually achieved. We wanted to talk uh, about why we know each other so well. Because we wrote a book together, and maybe that's then the story for the next or one of the coming podcasts. And I agree. Like if you have a story you want to cover or know someone who wants to participate, just contact us, and we make something out of it. As this project, it's not like we don't want to do the super high profile professional podcast. It's more that like, oh, two friends chatting with each other. So, and we invite everyone to come along and discuss with us.
Right. Everybody's invited to join us. And we hope you guys enjoyed it. And we are looking forward for the next episode, I would say, of our podcast. And we'll have very, very interesting guests, I can say. People who like not just one big, but also are really interesting as human beings, especially. Um, and I mean, I have so many stories right now in my head when I think about what the people did. Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be crazy. It's gonna be so fun.
Okay, then let's record the next one right after this one. No,
Yeah, let's do it.
let's do that. For the moment, let's sign off and
Yeah,
have a great week.
yeah. You guys, see you soon.